Welcome to Ep.4 of the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast, where we discuss finding, financing, and facilitating off-market real estate deals. I'm your host, Deborah Ojo, and I'm joined today on the show by Deborah from Deborah Homes to discuss and share her view on how to find off-market properties from the perspective of a real estate agent. In today's episode, Deborah and I discuss what it feels like to be an award-winning realtor, how you can work with realtors to purchase off-market investment properties, and why you need realtors on your power team while finding off-market properties. So you definitely don't want to miss this. So be sure to listen to the end. Before we dive in, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that's tuning in. If you're a fan of this podcast, hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. So now, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Deborah. Welcome to the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast.
Hey, Deji. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Thank you very, very much for being here. So let's dive in. For those of us who don't know who you are, would you mind kicking us off and letting our listeners know who you are?
Thank you. So my name is Deborah Ojo. I'm the founder of Deborah Homes. I'm a real estate agent in the GTA area, as well as an investor. So I started investing about 7-10 years ago. Eventually I became a realtor, trying to help people to make millions of dollars in real estate. At this point, I say I'm passionate about this now. I live and preach real estate. Everything around my life revolves around real estate, including conversation with my kids. So I'm a mom as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay. So teaching them young.
Definitely.
So what conversations?
We don't want to make all this money and then, the kids' choice away just because they don't know how hard you work for your money, how to manage it, how to maintain it. So since we are building generational wealth, we have to include those kids in the generational process of making that wealth as well.
Got it. Okay. I had mentioned when we started the show that one of the things that we would be discussing is how it feels to be an award-winning realtor. So I'd love you to give us a bit of overview about, what that award is about and what that feels like.
It feels good knowing that you set a goal, you are able to achieve that goal. So it just it's rewarding to yourself, to people around you that you can do it. And to me also, it's representation matters, right? So when I go somewhere, people say, oh yeah, this is Deborah Homes. Oh, this is Deborah Homes. And I think just people trying to see that representation, having people that looks like us is also, and we're able to make money in real estate. I think that matters a lot to me because when I started, I would go into a room and I won't see a person that looks like me. And I wanted the narrative to start changing. So that's one of the reasons why I went in to start teaching people and exposing people to this same thing that I am doing. Because when people don't see people like them and you're mentioning a lot of money, they're just like, that's not possible. I've had people reach out to me and say, I think what he wrote is a mistake. $400,000 is just not possible. But so that's what it feels like to me. That's my own passion and essence right now. But yeah, definitely it feels good. And you set another goal and another goal after that. But it's really about legacy for me.
Okay. And what's the name of the award, by the way? What does the award mean in the real estate agents world?
So the award that I won the last time was Hall of Fame and a chairman club. It's how much money you make, how much gross commission you're able to make. So Hall of Fame, for example, is $1 million plus in commissions. Okay. So that's what it is. And usually people are able to reach that award level maybe in 7 years or something. But it took me a really short while to be able to achieve mine. And, as a young Black girl with, 4 kids and lots of struggles and all of that, it definitely makes it speak louder to me and to a lot of people around me.
Congrats. That's impressive.
Thank you.
Okay. So I, for one, have always wondered how the real estate agent world works with respect to buying realtors and listing realtors. So would you maybe, for the listeners who are listening, give us an idea of the difference between those two?
Okay, so a realtor will most likely do both sides.
Okay.
But in most cases, some people are just more, let's say, passionate, or they just it's just easier for them to be like a buying agent. So a buying
Okay.
agent is a person that usually helps people to buy properties, right? It could be any kind of property, condos. Let's not forget, it could even be commercial properties. It could be land. It could be anything real estate. Whereas a selling agent, which is what everybody wants to be, because people usually don't trust you with their property until you are a little bit more experienced, right?
Okay.
So a selling realtor is a person that does more of selling properties,
Got it.
selling real estate. And definitely, between you and I, selling realtor is what everybody wants to be, because you're able to save time. When you're buying, you're showing people properties. You might show them 10 properties before they find one. Whereas when you're selling, you're just doing all the paperwork, you're putting it on MLS and moving to the next one, right? You can do a 9 to 5. So for a mother or just someone that wants to enjoy life, like people that like me knows I like to chop life small. So you're able to maximize your time and have the freedom that we really came into real estate for. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's the major difference.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. And the reason why I say that is I've had conversations with real estate agents where, for example, when they are showing their clients properties, they usually have to be with their clients. So to your point, if you are showing your client 10 properties, you probably have to be with them to show them all those properties.
Definitely. All of those properties. So if you have 10 clients and they need to see 10 houses in a month, you have 1,000. That becomes a job. But but if you are more of a seller client agent, you can first of all hire someone to even help you with all of those paperwork. But you're giving yourself freedom, and you're more gearing towards a CEO kind of business structure, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's bring it into the off-market investment world. And there's a term that is thrown out a lot, investor-focused realtors. And we hear that a lot in the investment space, in the off-market space. I want to work with an investor-focused realtor. Could you share your thoughts about, who an investor-focused realtor is?
So, investor-focused realtor to me is an agent that understands investment properties. A lot of agents are just focused on helping people buy and sell properties, just that, for residential purposes. But when you're talking about investments, you're crunching numbers, you're looking at how can my clients make money. You're advising them along the process. You're finding them deals that's gonna make money. You and I know that buying properties is where you make your money. You make money in the buying.
Yeah,
So when
exactly.
you are an investor focused realtor, you are able to have an eye to see and identify opportunities and deals for your clients. So that's what it means by a realtor that can help you make money versus the one that is just looking for the comfort of the house. For example, I flip properties. I flipped 10 properties last year. I can advise my clients on this is how you can make money. These are the numbers. We can buy over this amount, all of those. And you're also able to understand comparables. I mean, most agents should understand comparables, but
Yeah,
as an
100%.
investor focused client, even to understanding which strategy is right for this house, right? When you see a house, you're able to say, hey, you know what, I think flipping is right for this property, or
Yep.
hotel is right for this property, right? So that's what an investor focused client really means.
Perfect. And thank you very much for that. That's actually a segue into a question that I had. So you mentioned that an investor-focused realtor can help you identify what the best exit strategy is. So you mentioned that if you have a deal in place, you're thinking, do you want to wholesale the deal? Do you want to maybe wholesale the deal, or do you want to keep it as an investment property, as a rental, or do you want to sell it as a flip? You know, how do you usually advise your clients on, which of those exits might be the better exit to take at the time?
For me, it's just looking at the numbers, looking at the opportunity, looking at the property itself. For example, let's say a single family residence, for example, may not make sense for me to hold on for a long time just because it might not cash flow, right? And I tell my clients, and
Yeah.
also depends on where the client is. Are they first time investors? Are they veteran investors, right? So maybe making money, maybe their goal is to maximize the amount of money they can make in real estate before continuing to hold properties for a long time, right? That might be their goal. So depending on their goal, I can say, hey, since you're trying to maximize your profits, cash flow is not what you're looking for. Let's flip this property. If it's a single family and it's not even a flip, or the numbers are not going to make sense, maybe we shouldn't even be buying this property, right? So it depends on the person. It depends on the area. Is this area even an area? For example, a client of mine bought a house in Tillsonburg, Tillsonburg, Ontario. They bought
Yeah,
a
correct.
property there, and when the market flipped, it was just very hard to sell that property and to rent that property. So areas does
Okay.
matter. The stage where the client is in their investment journey matters. The amount of money they even have matters, right? Because I know you wholesalers sometimes
Okay.
like cash deals, for example. Is it something that the clients can do, right? So what is their
Yeah.
risk tolerance? There's a lot of factors that come into play when we're talking about what is best for each client, what is their risk appetite, what is good for them. And that's kind of how I roll. That's kind of how I advise my clients.
Okay. And are there any locations that you would recommend that maybe you operate in? You mentioned that you did about 10 flips last year. Do you have focused locations where you think, in a market like this, where it's a bit uncertain, as I say, location, 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 if you buy in a good location, your risk is a bit mitigated. So are there locations where you would recommend?
I would recommend that closer to the GTA is better in my own experience, just because there's access to amenities, transportation. So I live in Brampton. I like Brampton, Mississauga, Milton, because a lot of immigrants are coming to these areas. So
Okay.
even if you had a single family residence, there's opportunity for you to do Airbnb, for example. There's opportunity to, in some areas, even do student rental. So those places, and when COVID was going on, a lot of people were moving outside of the GTA to Toronto, to Simcoe, and all of that. Guess what? They are all coming back. So again, when we are looking at this, the closer you are to the GTA, the better it is. For me personally, I love those areas that I mentioned. I also love Barrie, right? Barrie has a
Mm-hmm.
very strong rental market. I've done few couple of flips in Barrie itself, and it's doing really, really well. But I would stay from areas where there's no employment opportunities for, for the for clients, or for people that are for the population there, right? Where there's no amenities. So the closer it is to the GCA generally, I find it's the better. But I say also depends on your price points, right? I've done
Yeah.
flip in um, Chatham, Ontario.
Okay.
Um, and Chatham is far, right? It's really
Very far
far.
from GTA. So that's about three
So for me,
hours, I
I'm
would
all
say.
over the place. I'm all, and that's why I say for me, it's more about seeing an opportunity and recognizing what it is that I want to do with this house that I got. Because when I see an opportunity which is buying its rights at a massive discount, I can then say, "Hey, Deborah, I think if you do this, you can uh, borrow this property and pull out your money back and just keep it there." But then we have to analyze: is it even a good location for rental? Our property, or we just flip outright and bring our money back in. For Chatham, I did flip it out right back, and I brought my money back to the GTA. So the time also matters, right? We can't time the markets, but we can at least try to time our strategy to
Yeah.
see if it's something that is going to work with the market conditions.
Okay, so let's talk more about that. So you are based in the GTA. You invested or did a flip property in Chatham, which is about 3 hours away. Not so many people are comfortable with remote investments. Not so many people are comfortable with long distance investments. So I would imagine that there's a certain level of comfort with the numbers that you would have to get to for you to do a deal far out in Chatham. So do you maybe want to walk us through, how you sort of run those numbers from a realtor's perspective? What are the things you would look at in a deal that would give you comfort and the confidence to invest that far out?
From a realtor perspective or from an investment perspective, I guess I'm both. But as an investor that is investing in this property by myself, I would look at what the comparables are in that area if I was to sell it, if I was to flip it. So I always try to have 2 or 3 exit strategies whenever I'm investing in anything. Otherwise, I am personally not going into it. I always tell people that I'm very risk adverse, as many, contrary to what people think. So I don't invest if there's no multiple exit strategies. Yes. So when I was running this deal, I think we bought the property. I want to say about $390 is what we paid for the property. I knew we could sell it over $650,000 or something like that was what we eventually sold it for. We also had contractors that were in that London, Tissenberg axis that doesn't mind helping us to look at those properties. So we would go there maybe once in 2 weeks to go see the properties. They would send us pictures. We advise on the things that we're doing. Mind you, by this time, we already have a standard as to what color we want to paint the whole house. What are the things we do for the whole house? So there's some kind of renovation that I wouldn't do, such as foundation, electrical, something like that. I just do like facelifts, right? So we see that property, it fits into those kind of categories, the kind of numbers we want to make, the profits I want to make sense for me to want to go that far, right? And then we have contractors around there that can also do it. So I wouldn't buy, for example, in maybe New Brunswick, because I don't have anybody. I don't have any team over there. But over here, I have a team of people that can help me, that I don't necessarily have to be there every single day supervising, myself. As a realtor, I can sell it because I can use my license to sell and negotiate my deal. So that gives me an advantage as well, right? So all of those things are things that I look at personally when I am investing. And I tell my clients, if it's an area that you don't understand as much, mind you, Chatham, that was my first time in Chatham. But I did my comparables. I spoke to local realtors around, even for me to have an in-depth knowledge about the area. I told them what I was trying to do. Do you think this makes sense? Do you think it's going to be possible? And, I got their feedback, right? So if you don't know an area, you can get realtors' perspective about it, but also having a team around there and just, making sure it's somewhere that you can somewhat manage with your lifestyle, right? Because again, I personally did not come into real estate for money. I came in here for freedom, right? And legacy. So if it doesn't fit into those priorities, Deborah Ojo is not doing it.
Okay. So you dropped a lot of bombs on that last answer. So you spoke from an investor standpoint, and you mentioned one thing. You said you were investing in Chatham for the first time, and then you spoke with local realtors in Chatham. So that's something I wanted to touch on, because in the journey of buying a property off market, I imagine that you bought this property off market?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so in the journey of buying a property off market, there's always touch points where you need to work with a realtor. And in this case, you were buying in Chatham for the first time and you reached out to a realtor. Now, I've had cases where we had deals where we didn't even engage a realtor. And I remember there was a deal in particular in Cambridge where I was trying to do the comparables, and I was comparing a semi-detached home that had vinyl exterior. Okay. I was comparing that semi-detached home with a vinyl exterior. I was comparing it to a detached home with brick exterior. So, so could you maybe share with us, when you are doing comparables, we hear a lot about like for like, apples for apples. How should people be doing comparables? Can you compare a condo to a detached house? Can you compare a brick house to a vinyl house? Can you compare a house with 5,000 square foot to a house with 500 square foot? Like, what are the key comparisons that you look at when doing comparables for an off-market property?
That's a great question. So, as a realtor, we're trained to be able to understand apple for apple. So, even in the same neighborhood, for example, communities change, right? So, it could be on my street, there's all detached properties. The next street could have a mix of detached and condos or townhouses or semis.
Okay.
And so, on my street, just because it's even in the same communities, my streets could be a lot more expensive just because now we kind of feel like on our street is kind of luxury, right? So
Okay.
those things also matters. So the neighborhood and just dial into the streets as close as possible. The size of the property matters. The size of the lot matters, right? So
Okay.
if I'm buying a 20 by 130 versus someone that has a 50 by 130, there's a size difference, right? So then we come back to the interior of the home. You spoke about exterior from a builder standpoint right now. If I was building the same house, one with vinyl, the other one without, sometimes you might pay up to $50,000 in difference. So I have to understand that as a realtor and take that into account. If you are coming to me with a house that has a vinyl, I might take out maybe $30,000 to $50,000 from the comparable. So I'm deducting and trying to see. Once I get to the house that I want to compare it to, usually we want about maybe two or three. Then we are now looking at all the different components of the house. Do you
Yeah.
have hardwood flooring? Do you have engineered flooring? How much work needs to be done in the house? And even within realtors, you guys should know that or may not know that. But within realtors, when we are negotiating, I'm like, that kitchen is really dated. If my clients was to spend on that kitchen, they will be spending $50,000. So because of that, I want $50,000 off the price. I think your price is not right, right? So again, you're comparing everything and you're deducting and subtracting until you get something that feels right. And
Okay.
truly, it really depends on your negotiating power too. How versatile and how comfortable you are with all of these things. But for me as an investor as well, just because I know how much I'll paint a cabinet, maybe I painted it, I don't know, less than $5,000. If a person does that and is selling to me as a new counter, I'm looking, no, 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 that's different price point. So it depends on the experience of the realtor, but generally, we are really comparing apples to apples, and we are subtracting and deduct and adding as we go along, based on the other properties that we see in the area.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. You had mentioned that whenever you do your deals, that you like to have multiple exits. So, could you share like the types of exits that you would like to have that would give you confidence in a deal? From my standpoint, I would usually look at, so because we do the wholesale route, one exit would be, if we close on this deal, can we use it as a rental, right? If we close on this deal, can we use it as an Airbnb? Wholesaling is the fastest exit. So once you're able to wholesale, that's exit one. But from your standpoint, what exits as an investor or as a realtor do you look at that interests you when looking at a building?
You can hear me. So,
Yes.
some of the exit strategies that I do, for me, I usually try to see if I can flip. For example, in some cases, sometimes I want to be able to rent the property. Sometimes I even consider rent to own the property. Sometimes I consider JVing with somebody else if I thought the risk was too high or the amount was too much or I just needed help in the area. For example, I am considering a deal now in Kitchener, Ontario, which is going to be my first time there. I
Okay.
need boots on ground, so I wouldn't mind to JV with someone rather than do it all alone. Again, a mother of four, running around crazy and just not, I just thought that's penny wise pound foolish. So JV is one of those things that I consider. What else do I consider? Yeah, those are some of the options that I want on the table when I'm doing deals.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for that feedback. So a question that I've always wanted to ask is around pocket listings, right? So we do a lot of off-market deals, but we also get referrals from realtors as well who have pocket listings. So can you share with us, how pocket listings work, how they differ from traditional off-market deals that people doing wholesaling would usually have?
So as realtors, when I have pockets listing, similar to an wholesaler, maybe because the owner doesn't want their house on the market, on the MLS, so we would have them sign a contract with us that we're selling the property. So we call it sometimes exclusive listings.
Okay.
So we are then able to share it at least within a network of other realtors. So,
Okay.
for example, I am in an office with 1,000 other agents. So I'm able to share it with them and say, hey, I have this listing. Do you have any clients that is interested? So that's how Pocket Listing works for us. I'm also able to share it with my database. I'm able to call my clients that comes to mind that has been looking for this kind of house for a long time. So
Okay.
that's usually, and in most cases, to be honest, we'll try to have a property exclusively for about a week, and then we put it on the market. Because sometimes we find it very, very useful as well to share with our client base that are motivated, and then we put it on the market if they sign those kind of agreements. Whereas if you're putting something just right up on MLS, you're putting it on MLS from day one and you're exposing it all to the market. So that's kind of the difference and how we treat it.
Okay. So when the client signs an exclusive listing, would they need to sign an MLS listing as well for that to go on the market, or is the exclusive listing only for off market?
So exclusive listing is the same form. We just have to click or check off the part that says exclusive listing.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we have to check it off for us to be able to put it within the internet channels. And then when it's MLS, most times houses will take a while to get ready. But at least when we have the exclusive listing checked off, we can start marketing it within our network.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So I had another question. I was looking at the reports, and I forget what the report is called, but it said about 8 to 9%. So 8 out of 10 people would buy or sell their property with a realtor, right? But there's the 1 or 2 people that would go privately. So I wanted to get your thoughts on for the sellers who are looking to go privately, like, how have you seen that those types of sellers are very different from the ones that sell on the MLS?
How those sellers are different?
Yeah.
Different reasons. There are different reasons why a seller might want to sell their property exclusively, ranging from I don't even want my neighbor to know that I'm selling a house. I don't want my family to know that I'm selling a house. If, for example, we are divorcing and stuff like that. So they would just want to sell it privately without people necessarily coming into their house. I've also seen cases where my kids are in the house, we are very busy, we just want one person to come in a day, or we just give a day, and everybody that is interested in this property is going to come and see the property. In most cases, though, because they don't have as much exposure, they may need to sell it at some discounts, right? Just because of that, to attract more people. In cases like that, too, we need a network that we might send this listings to, could be even wholesalers as well, right?
Okay.
To see who is interested, in this property, because in some cases as well, they might even want to sell because they want to sell it ASAP. They want a quick closing, which on the MLS, in most cases, an average house will close between at least 3 weeks to 3, 4, 6 months
Yep.
sometimes. So when you want to sell something, you want to get rid of it quickly. That's when sellers would typically go through exclusive means. There's also the case of your house is not in a great showing condition. It doesn't
Yeah.
show well. So you don't have time to decorate and stage and all of that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Different cases like that is why people might, although sellers could consider um, wholesaling the property. Oh, sorry, as selling the properties exclusively.
Okay. Okay. So in that case, for the sellers who are looking to sell privately, um, I would imagine that if they engage with the realtor, then they can go the pocket listing route.
Yes.
So are real estate agents allowed to wholesale properties? Because I know that there needs to be some level of disclosure that happens when you're speaking with the seller. So are real estate agents allowed to wholesale properties, or or they're not?
No, so a real estate agent in Ontario cannot wholesale properties unless they disclose it to the clients.
Okay.
But I've seen cases where I don't personally do it, but I've seen cases where people will get that signature and they will then try to wholesale the property.
Okay.
For me, I would prefer to then take it exclusively or try to partner with an wholesaler that does this full time and they have a bigger database than me and they can wholesale it that way.
Okay. So if you have any of those deals, please let me know, because we're looking for deals.
For sure, Deji, for sure.
Okay. So you touch on a good point, which is partnering with wholesalers. So in the past, how have you worked with wholesalers? And it could be buying an off-market deal from the wholesaler. It could be doing comparables for a wholesaler. But how have you found working with wholesalers in your business?
Um, for me as a real estate investor, I would also like a lot. In terms of some pocket listing or just bringing opportunities to my database or to my clients, I've worked with wholesalers a lot where I see a property that they can, do some deals or some kind of strategy with, and I suggest it to my clients, and then I just add my commission on top. That's usually how it works with wholesalers. So that's kind of how I partner with them, but I partner more with them as in buying my own investments or using it to build my own investment portfolio.
Okay. You touched on a very good point, because that's also one thing that we've done very well. So we have some markets where I would say maybe 80% of the deals that we've assigned in those markets, we actually assign them to realtors clients, right? And so, and what we find is, for example, someone who is looking to buy an investment property, and maybe there's a bidding war. Now, I'm speaking about when the market was still very hot.
I know.
There's a bidding war, and then you find a property that isn't brand new or isn't fully renovated, maybe needs $10,000 in renovations, and that client has probably been outbid, for the past 1 month. So we find that those clients are typically willing to buy investment properties or properties off markets that they could just put like maybe $10,000 or $20,000 in, and it would be essentially what they would have bought on the market. So we've done that a lot, and it's been very, very helpful actually working with realtors that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot, especially when the market was hot, there was just not enough properties. Even now that the market is a little bit slow, people are now finding what they want. The inventory is still low.
Yeah.
So activities are generally low, but inventory is still lower than what it should be. I'm finding. So in those cases, that's where we come to wholesalers and say, I'm partners, so send me all the deals that you have, and I'll see which ones of it my clients might be interested in, especially on the ones that doesn't need so much work.
Yeah.
I find synergy in those kind of properties.
Okay. I know that there's quite a number of wholesalers who will be listening to this conversation. One of the touch points that I know that wholesalers have with realtors is comparables, right? Because when you are discussing with the seller off market and the seller says, oh, I want this amount for my house, you probably have now this is assuming you're in a new market. You probably don't have an idea of that market. You don't have an idea of the neighborhood. So the first thing that comes to mind is I need to speak with the realtor who knows this area, right? Because I want to do my comparables. I want to ensure that I'm buying right. And the way we do it is we would first identify what the ARV is. What's the after repair value? Mm-hmm. Honestly, in some markets, we can get that online, but there's some markets that have closed boards. So we need a real estate agent to provide us that value. So the ARV for us is something that we can't get wrong, because once the ARV is wrong, there's an issue. So that whole comparable process, could you, like, I know you've touched on it before, but, how do you work with wholesalers, when you're helping them to provide comparables for off-market deals? And do you sort of get first dibs on those off-market deals for your clients?
Yes, absolutely. Some wholesalers that I've worked with in the past, it's more like a partnership kind of thing. So, sometimes they would even send me those properties before they send it to everybody else. So I don't only get first dip on that property, I kind of get first dip and priority. I'm on their priority list for all the other properties that they have. So it's more like a symbiotic relationship. So if I'm able to sell it, definitely I get my commission, I get priority, priority list. And then if I'm not, I get it on any other property. So either ways, we're still working together. So that's kind of how it works. And when you are doing comparables for them, definitely a lot of wholesalers understand the numbers. So once you print it out, you pull the information, you're educating them on the community. The street is different. I've worked in that street before. This is generally the problem that is even going on that street, for example. So things like that. For example, there might be streets where there's a lot of thefts, some different things like that. You're more providing value as a local realtor in that area. And I found that's been very, very helpful. But again, wholesalers has access to a lot of deals that realtors may not have access to by just the nature of what we do. We kind of do the same thing, but on a parallel, not parallel, but in two different worlds, but we are mostly doing the same thing.
I find that there's a lot of collaboration, but I find that it's also largely different, right? Like the use case is different in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, like out of 10 people, I would say 8 or 9 sellers would probably sell their property on the market, and you have like 1 or 2 people that would sell privately. And their reasons for selling privately, as you mentioned, is more around speed and convenience versus price. So the use case is really different. If I'm selling for price versus speed and convenience, like the experience is different, right? So, I can see some parallels.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to touch on is the concept of expired listings, right? Because when the property is on the MLS, the whole world can see it. It's on the market at that point in time. Once it gets expired, it still shows online, but it's not. Is it still categorized as on the MLS, or is it now an off-market property?
Okay, good question. So for us, when we are doing the contracts, there's a part in the contract that says, I forgot what the term is called, but there's a part that says that we can connect with our clients even 2 weeks or 3 weeks after. So once a contract is expired on MLS, we might still have, depending on how many days, I've seen people put even 60 days after to be able to, if any clients came to see this property during that time, I still have those 60 days to be able to come back to my clients and sell or
Got it.
negotiate on their behalf and still represent them. So, but once those listings are expired and it's not renewed by us, then anybody else, any realtor, any wholesaler, anybody can really take over the listing if the client is
Got
still
it.
interested in selling.
Okay. So it's only realtors that have access to expired listings.
Um, I think so. But on Zolo as well, I've seen clients bring me in listings and it says it's no longer on the market. For you to really
Okay.
understand why, whether it's expired or it's just pulled away for some time, because there are cases like that where it's just suspended.
Yep.
For you to understand the reason, I think it's only realtors that has access to that. But you would still see history of this house on the market. If it's sold, you will, in most cases, you're able to see it. In my market, you're able to see it. But if it's just
Okay.
suspended or expired, you may not be able to see why it's just not on the market or why it's just, sitting there not sold. So I think that's definitely another collaboration between realtors and wholesalers, if you will.
Okay. Okay. So a question that I had. So you know how in some markets there's online sites, for example, like House Sigma, that you could check comparable sales. What would you say is the benefit of working with the realtor versus just going on those sites and trying to do comparable sales yourself?
I don't know how trained wholesalers are in the world of comparing properties and also understanding the local, having a local knowledge of an area. I think that's
Yeah.
very, very important. And that might be sometimes something that you might be missing in your negotiations. So, for example, I told you, even when I went to Chatham, I have access to some of even those information through the MLS because you can join their local board over there. I
Okay.
still wanted to understand from a local realtor point of view what exactly is going on in that market. So there are a few, information that those people could have that could benefit me, even like even days on the market. Why is it? Why are houses taking longer? So I might see the days on the market, but I may not understand the reason why. Is everybody on those streets kind of changed their kitchen? Is everything refurbished? Is
Yeah. Yeah.
just information like that you may not have access to. um, Local realtors may have access to those information. So I think there's still benefits in talking to local realtors and trying to see synergy over there. And in most cases, realtor like me, especially, I don't mind. It only takes me maybe 5-10 minutes to pull up a comparable.
Yeah.
Pull out a comparable. So it's not something that is a big deal. If I have the time, I might just say, hey, give me 12 hours, give me 6 hours, or I can do it right away because I'm just by my computer. But I think
Okay.
that information might be necessary for your negotiations.
Okay. We've also had an experience, like to buttress your points, why it's important to work with a real estate agent and not just focus on those sites. So we had an experience with a wholesale deal. Well, we didn't assign the deal. I think it was in Chatham, and we were relying on comparables that we had access to, I think, from the Chatham board. And because we were doing a lot of activity, we already had some properties that we knew that had sold, but we didn't connect with the realtor at the time. But there were some other properties that sold, and I think they were listed on a different board. So it wasn't showing. So when we're looking at what sold, we're like, oh, this is all that sold, and this is the price it sold. We were not aware that there were some other properties that sold for higher. So I was
Oh
like,
wow.
oh,
You're leaving money
the
on the
only property
table.
that sold for like 200K, for example. But maybe there were properties that were selling for like 300K, but they were listed on a different board, something like that. So when we were going into like negotiate with the seller, we were going in very low, just because what we saw. So there was such a huge misalignment with
That
respect to the price that we were willing to pay because our ARVs were so low. We then found out, I think 2 months later, that another wholesaler got that deal. But when they sent out the deal, the comparables they used were way high. I'm like, what? So I checked and I was like, these properties were literally next street to the subject property. How didn't we find it? So, we found out that, okay, it was on a separate board. So it was we leaving money on the table because we could have offered more because the ARVs allowed for more. We could have made a wholesale fee on that deal. But because we didn't see the full picture, we were only seeing a constrained view of the ARV or of the sold properties. We thought our offer price had to be that low. So, that was also another lesson that we learned. Like when you are buying deals in a market that you aren't very familiar with, as you said, you want to speak with a realtor who is not like, you're buying in Chatham, you're speaking with the realtor in Barry. There's a disconnect there. But if you're buying a building in Barry, then you speak with a Barry realtor. If you're buying a building in Chatham, you speak with a Chatham realtor. So that was one, L that we experienced because we were trying to do things without working with realtors. So I just wanted to buttress the point that you made with that case study, if you will, of a painful experience that we had.
Yeah, definitely. I think even like I said, agents work with other agents. I do a lot of deals in Ottawa, but I work alongside with realtors in Ottawa, right? So yeah, definitely it's very, very important.
Okay. You mentioned something, about when you do deals, the fact that you're a realtor, there's an advantage there. So for investors who are looking to partner with realtors, because it happens a lot, where, if you decide to do an exit, which is a hotel, you are partnered with a realtor who would maybe help on the commission side. Are there partnership structures that you would recommend between wholesalers or, investors and realtors when buying off-market properties?
I mean, I still messaged you on Facebook on Sunday, was it? And I said, hey, Deji, I saw what you said there. Can we see we can JV over here? Because the truth is, like I said, we might be in parallel worlds, but doesn't mean we can't work together. So in that kind of deal, hey, Deji, what's up here? How much do I have to pay? And can you maybe manage it? Sometimes I've seen wholesalers refer contractors to me locally just because they know
Yep.
that area. And then, they can get a referral fee or something. In that kind of deal that I'm talking about, so I can say, hey, do you have um, local contractors? You've also
Yep.
done more due diligence on that deal. So I haven't had the time to study it. So I can
Yep.
also do that. And we can do typical JV structure where I put the money down and you are the money partner, but you are also bringing a deal to the table, right?
Yeah.
It
Okay.
could be a case where, hey, we're going to find someone that is going to buy this property as an wholesaler, but when it's time
Okay.
to sell it, because you pull out the comparables, we're going to be recommending or referring that client to you so that you can help them to sell. And we can recommend you knowing that you also flip properties and you wholesale a lot of properties. So we do know that you know your numbers there. So we are confident
Yeah. Yeah.
because we are referring our clients to an agent that knows what she's doing, right? So
Yeah.
it could be a symbiotic relationship. I partner with, mortgage brokers, lawyers, And the last thing I want is when I refer someone to my clients, I don't want them to say, hey, the lawyer dropped the ball because they didn't know what they were doing. So
Yeah.
in my world, when I'm working with an investor, I want all the team around them to be investors because I don't want us to be
Okay.
saying A and they get to the G and they just say, no, no, cancel what Deborah said. That's not, that's not okay. That's not right. So we want to be professional before our team, before our clients. And I think one way of doing that is collaborating with other people that we trust and we kind of vetted ourselves. Plus, we can do deals and we can help each other out that way too.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So in this market, because you mentioned that last year you flipped 10 properties, and the whole conversation around last year was flippers are suffering. So what was your experience flipping properties last year with the market turning? How has your strategy changed, and what would be your strategy for 2023, for your clients looking for off-market deals in 2023? How are you basically tackling the market and pivoting?
Remember, I said I'm very laser adverse. Sorry, not laser adverse. Risk adverse.
Yeah.
I could be very, very risk adverse. I have to see through something. I want exit strategies. So right now, I am not doing flipping as much. I
Okay.
haven't done any flipping this year. If the market changes and I see opportunities there, I will definitely do it. But right now, it's just too risky for me personally. Because when we buy our properties, we buy cash down, right? Banks are not wanting to finance even wholesale deals right now. When you buy it cash, they're asking too much
Yeah.
questions, so it's not easy there. So I that's a risk for me. However, I think buying properties for Airbnb, it's not such a bad idea if you have a great location. Like I'm talking about GTA, like Toronto, maybe Mississauga, all the big areas where again immigrants are coming to, professionals are coming to for corporate rentals, right? So I would say that's an opportunity. I personally don't do Airbnb, but I've suggested it to my clients, and some of them are doing really, really well. Um, Personally, I think I'm going to be doing like the Kingston property that I'm working on is a building. It's a 10 units townhouses complex. So I'm going to be doing bigger because again, multi units are recession proofed. So I am
Okay.
looking for things that are recession proofed in case the R word, happens, right? If recession does hit, I want something that is recession proof.
Yeah.
So those are the two strategies that I am kind of looking at. I've bought some of my properties, and I think I will still do some because I already have those properties. I already bought them. I was just not focused on them last year because
Yeah.
I was very busy. So right now I have opportunities there. And when you also are doing this, you partner with a lot of professionals, but one of my business partners are the bank. So I have a good relationship with some of the banks because of the volume that I do. So sometimes they give me preference or priority there as well. So it's something that may not make sense for a first time investor or somebody else may make sense for me because of the access to credits that I have or even the preferred mortgage rates that I have. I
Okay.
think upsizing is another opportunity in this market. So if you have an interest rate of, let's say, 2.5%, you sold the house, you're still able to keep the mortgage. So you're just putting your mortgage to another property. So you're still keeping that 2.5% and you're just transferring it to a house that you're going to buy on sale anyways, right? So that makes sense. So I think there's opportunities for first-time buyers or people that want to upscale or even downsize in those markets just because they have opportunities to get better discounts on their mortgages. Some of the buildings that
Okay.
I want to buy, I'm looking for things that I can assume the mortgage. So I think there's also a lot of creative financing right now opportunities that we didn't have last year, right? All the sellers last year, they
Yep.
wanted to cash out. They don't want vendors take back. They don't want to hear it. Now I'm like, the person I put on the table, hey, vendors take back, put it in there. I'm giving them 2 or 3 offers and I'm trying to see which one they might go with. How do we work this out? So there's a lot more time and patience for us to analyze deals and make sure we stick to the fundamentals and make sure that all those things are properties or deals are recession proofed, just to make sure that
Okay.
we don't sink. I call this time a break or make time. That's how I call it. It's
I
either
agree
you
with
do
you.
some, it's either you do something and you do it right so that you can make it in the long run, or you rush into something, you do one deal, and you can be down 500,000. People who are doing pre-construction, they are down a lot. I know people that have lost $500,000 in pre-construction. But like 6 pre-constructions, the property are down now, and they just lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you stick to the fundamentals, understanding real estate investment itself, partnering with agents or wholesalers that can also hold your end and kind of guide you through the process, I think it's a wealth redistribution time, just like 2020, just like 2008. And we're going to be doing well for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I haven't been in the space too long, but what I have done is, to get in the room with more experienced investors who have invested across multiple cycles, so up and down cycles. And to your point, which you just mentioned now, a lot of them have echoed the same sentiment, which is we are moving into a wealth redistribution era where, it's harder to find deals now, as you pointed out. A lot of buyers are priced out of the markets. It's really only savvy investors and savvy buyers that are buying now. A lot of the things you mentioned, it's because you and I are speaking, but a lot of people might not understand when you say VTB, creative financing, assumable mortgage, agreement for sale. A lot of those creative financing terms are not commonplace, right? But when you come into a market like we are in right now, those are the terms that start to stick out because that's how you buy those properties. A lot of sellers, as you pointed out, are in situations where they can't sell their properties traditionally. They just
Yeah.
can't say, I want $1 million. They need some level of creativity to sell. And it's only buyers who understand that, okay, now is the time to buy and hold so that when the market comes back up in the next maybe 6, 8 months, 1 year, you ride the wave up, right? So that's a segue to
6 months
the
will be a
final question.
miracle. Just let me put out that there. 6 months
So
is it's gonna be good for us, but I think 6 months is a miracle for sure.
I had read an article, and I don't know how valid it is, that on average it takes about 13 months, for the quantitative tightening process to happen and then for the BOC to course correct. And I think this started February last year or March last year. So I think we are in maybe the 11th month right now.
But they are still
So
tightening. So the effects of the last one, we don't feel it fully until the 13th month.
until the
So
next 2, 3 months. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So
even
I would
6 months
imagine that,
down the line.
yeah, kind of. So 6 months down the line, we would say towards Q3, Q4, I would say that's probably when the effects will start to maybe plateau. And then from 2024, depending on when they start to raise the rates, you could start to see things going back up, maybe in 2024, right? So when I say 6 to 8 months, I'm thinking Q3.
Yeah.
But, but
And
again,
for me,
no
I
one knows the
think
market, right?
no one knows. And like COVID, when COVID happened, everybody was scared and we didn't know what was going to happen. But again, the government started printing money, so it's all about positioning too. If they decide to print money again and pushing things down a little bit, or if there is immigration, there might just be a policy that is going to change everything. That's why we don't really know what's going to happen. But what I say to the listeners is just try to position yourself. Don't bite more than you can chew. Because for me, what I
Mhm.
tell my clients is I don't want to hear husband is sleeping on one side, wife is sleeping on the other side, and they are all turned their back on each other. because of financial problems, right? So buy whatever it is that you can afford for long run, and just make sure that you position yourself at least for the redistribution of wealth for whenever that happens.
Okay. What advice would you have for other realtors or maybe other investors that are working with realtors with respect to what, like, creatively structuring deals? And the reason why I ask is there's the notion that with realtors and creative deals, they don't go hand in hand, right? You know, that most realtors would just want to do a deal today and walk away. And you don't see so many realtors promoting creative deals. But from your standpoint, you are doing a lot of creative deals. You understand that this market requires creative deals. So how would you, shed more light on how best to work with realtors to start making creative offers in this market?
I think for a lot of realtors that want to stay in the game, because there are unfortunately some realtors that are considering other jobs right now, or that have even left real estate. But I think it's easier for us to just buy and sell for our clients, whether for residential reasons or for investment reasons. But I think one of the best things we can do for our clients is to represent them in the best way possible. And some of it might include thinking outside of the box within the legal system, and just helping our clients to achieve their goals. So I think if we want to stay here for the longer term, we're going to have to start thinking about who are the partners that I need to position myself and to help my clients, right? What are the other things that I need to educate myself on to even understand the kind of creativity or the creative strategies that are out there? So this is the time for them to learn creative methods. This is the time for them to partner with other people and understand what it is that they are doing and how they can help. Talk to your clients and see what they need, and bring those information back to the professional circle you belong to, for them to understand how can we all work together. One thing is, a lot of jobs, not just real estate agents, are losing their jobs. My technical clients, like IT professionals, everybody's losing their job. And if we don't lose our job, sometimes we might even lose it to AI, artificial intelligence. So
tell me about it.
So at the end of the day, we need to continue to innovate, right? That's the only way we can stay on top of the craziness, right? So I think definitely trying to reach out and learning other ways of doing things will be the best way to go about it.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of this episode. But before we let you go, there's one question, which is the question of the show, that we would like to ask. And it goes as thus. Can you tell us your greatest L? And by L, like, your greatest L in real estate, the thing that you're like, oh my God, I don't want to remember this. Maybe a transaction that didn't go well.
This question was in this question. My greatest L in real estate. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So essentially, it's your greatest L and what you learned from it. So it's just an experience that you had, that provided you with a learning opportunity that carries along with you, essentially.
I mean, every investor, I believe most investors has lost at one point or the other in real estate. In as much as we make a lot of money, we also go through some losses or lessons learned. So I think one of the things that I might want to highlight is JVing with people and actually structuring it right. Sometimes we talk about JV, and especially in our community, I find that there has to be, they say trust is not needed when you're JVing, but also structuring it right, making sure you put all the ideas on paper and you're working with
Yeah.
lawyers that are able to help you structure it and cover all the answers. So I did work with a JV deal before, and my partners just wouldn't, they didn't understand real estate as much as I do. They were, it's their first time. I actually called them to doing it, and they didn't want me to make they didn't understand the decisions that needed to be made, because they are more
Okay.
emotional about the money. I want to keep it longer so that I can sell it afterwards. But I'm saying, hey, the market is about to turn, guys. I sold 5 of my properties because I know exactly what's going to happen. We need to sell, otherwise, we're going to have to wait for the next market cycle that could be 2, 3, 4 years, right? So I think understanding who makes the decision concerning this
Yeah.
deal. How are we going to manage our time? Who is responsible for property management? So all of those things were not really spelled out. And mind you, it was a lawyer that wrote this deal, but it's just some of these
Okay.
things were not there. So sometimes I
Yeah.
think as Davin is getting more advanced and popular, there are more clauses. They are still reviewing it, and there are more clauses that have been added. So I think the version that I had didn't cover all the things that I needed, and that was hell because
Yeah.
we almost lost all of our money plus our profits. But eventually, I was
Oh.
able to just speak sense to them, kept talking, and eventually they did see light and they sold the property, and we all made money. And now we are friends, and they like the fact that I didn't give up. So, and they say, "Oh yeah, Deborah is an expert." Which is sweet. I'm like, "Yeah, duh, yes, you should." But yeah, that's one of the L's that I've gone through.
Love it. Love it. Um, yeah, that's something that I know that a lot of people don't take as seriously as they should. Really setting clear expectations of not just you know in some of the contracts that we've done, we include expectations as to who chooses the realtor to sell with.
Wow.
Who makes the decision to sell, who sets the price,
Hmm.
right? So if I said, oh, I want to sell for 400, and then the other person says, no, let's list for 500, so that could be
Yeah,
something that could cause delay, right? And in a market like we are in today, you don't want to work with a JV partner and you have a difference of opinion when it comes to listing price. You don't want to have a difference of opinion when it comes to the time to lower your price if it's not set in. So case in point, there was a deal that we sold, and we had to lower the price. Thankfully, like my JV partner and I, we just got on the call and said, you know what, this is the price we want to lower it to, and we agreed. But I can imagine if one of us said, no, let's leave it at this price, we might not have sold, or we might have sold later. And later in this market means lower, right? So
yeah,
we might have sold later and lower. So thanks for sharing that. I think it's really critical that any decision-making points that can come up in an agreement should always be written down, because you just never know at what point there would be differences of opinion, on that particular
definitely,
decision point.
definitely. And it comes with experience too.
Okay.
Just yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The more deals that you do, the more scenarios that come up.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone wants to reach you, Deborah, what's the best way to reach you?
I am an Instagram girl, so you would find me more on Instagram. Instagram on Deborah Owns is what you can search for. I am also on Facebook. It's Deborah Owns. On Twitter, Deborah Owns One, and on LinkedIn and TikTok as well. But I'm more present on Instagram, so that's where you can find me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Deborah, for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
This
And
was really fun.
it's a pleasure. Thank you. And And that's it, folks. We hope everything you've learned today has been very beneficial to you. As always, thanks for listening to the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And be sure to hit that subscribe and notification button so that you know when this episode drops and when the next episode drops. So until then, remember, a deal a day keeps scarcity at bay. Thank you.